Such a... Why am I interviewing this lady? So we mentioned vaccination in Hot Topics, and right now consultant pediatrician Dr. Lisa Franklin-Banton is here to expand on that and take us through this year's back-to-school health concerns. Morning, great to see you again.
Good morning, thank you.
And this is real for you also, because your son heads off to high school for the first time?
Yes, it's very real, so I'm one of those anxious parents as well.
Well, congrats first.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're probably a little bit more anxious than he is.
I'm trying not to be, but I think I am.
Yeah. Some of the concerns, I was teasing, I think it was on Monday, that we were talking about, because they're going back to school, you need to start the routine a little early. And I said, no, give them a chance, let them sleep all day till forever, until they're ready to go back to school. But that's not the best thing to do. You kind of have to start a pattern just a little bit before, don't you?
Absolutely. It's not practical to wake up on Monday morning and think that they're going to wake up on time. So it's really recommended that probably a week, 2 weeks before, that you start that routine slowly, where they're going back to bed at a regular time, because a lot of them have been going to bed 10, 11 o'clock. And you really shouldn't have that during the school term, because then they wake up, they're not wanting to wake up on time. So you really want to get them back into that routine slowly. Should have happened already, but it's never too late. So if you haven't started that yet, tonight is a good night to start. Get them to bed at least an hour earlier than they have been going to bed, if they're not going to bed at a decent time, and try to get them back into that pattern.
But when they get up, what do they do? They're not going to school. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but they're not going to school, so...
Well, for my boys at home, what I have done is I've actually left a little bit of work for them to do. So I get their brains ticking as well. Right. So not only are they getting up, but at least they're getting back into the mode of reading the book. So no more TV. We're at least doing some math. We're reading the book. We're getting back into that routine of school.
Yeah, you were right when you said it's probably a little bit late now, because school actually starts on Monday. We're Thursday here. The second one we want to look at, get an annual physical. Again, it probably should have been done already.
But unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm sure most pediatricians' office for the last week have been very hectic. A lot of parents wait until the last minute to get that done. But better late than never. So you really want to get that physical done to try to identify any problems before they go back into the school. You don't want that they're back into school and then you're coming up with all of these things that are making them miss school. So getting that physical is very important. We do things like checking their blood pressure, checking their vision, just generally having chats with them about school, what to expect, and coping mechanisms on how to go through school. I mean, it's amazing to know how many kids you pick up with that back-to-school physical who need glasses because their vision really is not as good as it should be. And the parents are not aware. You do that screening and you realize that, wow, this child really needs to see someone because they really haven't been seen very well. So it's very important that we get that back-to-school physical done.
Which is the next one. The eye exam is the next one. But to be honest, the physical is almost necessary for most of these schools, don't?
Well, not all schools make it mandatory. Okay. So there are some schools who make it mandatory for new students, but it's not done for the students who are returning. Okay. There are some schools, I've seen some schools where every year is mandated that they get the physical done, but that's not in most of the cases.
Yep. The physical, you mentioned eyes. Should there be a specific eye exam, or would the physical cover that?
Well, what we do a screening. So we have a chart that we do a screening during the physical. If it is that you find that there is a problem, so then the vision, then we refer them to have it done formally so that it's tested.
But you should get an eye exam, whether through the physical or anywhere else.
Absolutely.
Dental stuff?
Again, most persons should be getting their twice yearly dental visits. So back to school may not necessarily coincide with that visit. If they're getting regular visits, well, then it doesn't necessarily have to be done for back to school. But you do pick up some kids who have never been to the dentist. So they come for the physical, you ask them about their dental visits, and they tell you that they've never been to the dentist. So then you encourage them to at least have a dental visit before they go back to school.
Okay. We just, in the previous interview, we were talking about eating and well, not necessarily eating healthily, but you should. But that would differ, because like I don't eat meat. Some parents might want to give the kids a big breakfast, some might want to give them cereal. How do you work that out?
Well, every child is different. I mean, there are some kids who don't want to eat in the mornings. Breakfast by far is the most important meal of the day. What I say to those parents, if you have a child who doesn't necessarily want to eat the first thing in the morning, pack something for them to take with them. They can have it along the way, because unfortunately a lot of our kids are waking up really, really early to go to school. And when they get up, they're still groggy. They don't want to eat. But at least have something that at least when they get to school, they can eat it. Because starting school on a hungry stomach is not going to work. Focus is not going to be there. So you really want to ensure that they have a proper breakfast in the morning and that they eat properly.
Would it matter if they had something like in the car? Because some of these kids that live in Portmore, but they go to school in Mona or something like that. Or would the drive and the eating not be the best thing either?
Well, every child is different. There are some kids, you have to know your child. So if your child, there are lots of kids who have their breakfast in the car, and it's not a problem. I just want to ensure that they have breakfast. If you can tolerate it and eat it in the car and it not be a problem, that's fine. Yeah. There are some kids that they wouldn't be able to eat it in the car. So maybe when they get to school, you take them aside, you know, and just have them have that breakfast.
Yeah. I was at school one day in the middle of the day. I think it was probably lunchtime, and I saw all these kids with the school bag, the backpack. So I said, school over? And they said, no. So I said, why everybody walk one with the bag? And apparently they can't leave it in the classroom, which is just ridiculous. And they walk around with this big backpack with all kinds of heavy books. Some of the kids, look at that, and that's real, folks. And then some of the kids
Absolutely.
who play sport,
yes, have the extra
have the boots
bags.
in
Yes.
the backpack, and they have the books in the backpack, and they have sneakers in the backpack. That can't be good for them, though.
Boy, I mean, as I said, my son is going into high school, and that's going to be a real thing for him now. And I'm trying to figure out how can he get around it. But apparently there's very little way to get around it, because there's fear of people taking your stuff. So yes, every step they take, they're the bag on the back, and it really isn't good. And as you said, these bags are really heavy, and having a pulley bag at high school is not cool. So telling them to have a pulley bag for high school, that's not working either. Not so sure what the solution to that is.
Maybe
I mean, try to...
Lonja just made the point, maybe they need lockers or something like that.
I mean, where I went to school back in Barbados, our desk was able, we were able to put our things in our desk and lock it, so we didn't have to walk around with heavy bags. Coming here, I thought that was a norm for high schools, only to realize that no, it's just a desk. There's nothing that you can store your stuff in, so you do have to walk around with these heavy bags on your back, which is very unfortunate. What
kind of damage can be done because of that? Because
well,
some are really heavy. I mean, I picked up one of the kids at school, and it's really heavy. I mean, I'm not teasing. They have some thick textbooks.
Absolutely.
And look at that. I mean, that might be exaggerating just a bit, but it's not much lighter than what we're looking at.
I mean, well, imagine you walking around with a weight on your back for the entire day. Yeah. I mean, it causes back strain. It can cause issues in terms of hernias and that sort of stuff. It just is not practical. I mean, you really shouldn't be doing it.
Well, why? Just leave the people them things. Sure. Homework and study habits.
Yes, and that's why, as I said, it's important to start that now. I mean, homework really should be done in a quiet area. Not everyone has the privilege of having like a little study at home, but just set aside an area where there are no distractions. We don't want the television nearby. We don't want to have other things that would distract them. We don't want the clutter. So just have a small space where, you know, you can just focus. Good lighting, that's very important. So make sure that the lighting is good, because you really don't want to be damaging the eyes, and an area where they can just focus.
Some of these kids, and I've always said, maybe because I'm so close to them, that they're kind of under pressure, because especially the ones who are involved at school. I mean, when I say involved with the extracurricular, whether it's sport or maybe the key club or something, and some of them don't get home till a little later than they probably should. What do you do? Because you don't want, they come home 6 o'clock and you say, what do your homework? They have to take a little break or something? How you get around that?
Time management is very important. I mean, some of those activities don't necessarily start immediately after school. What I encourage my kids to do is that during that time, if there's a small break in between, try to get something done, so that when you come home, because they do come home with a lot of homework, so that when you come home, you're not up up late in the night trying to get that done. And yes, a lot of them do need to de-stress a little. So coming home and immediately telling them, go and do your homework, it doesn't work for everybody. It may work for some, but you really have to know your child and what your child is capable of. But taking a small break, and depending on how much homework it is and how much time you have, that may just be a 15-minute break. Taking a nice shower, de-stressing, and then getting to the homework.
And again, as a football coach, sometimes I get a little concerned with the kids because school ends at 2:40. We start training at 3.
Yeah.
Training ends about 5.
Yes.
By the time they change, they don't leave school till about 6.
Yes.
And depending on where they live, they don't get home till about 7.
Yes.
And they are tired.
And then they're up early in the morning, because you can't even say, okay, we'll do it in the morning, because there's really very little time to do it in the morning. So our kids really are under a lot of pressure.
Final topic would be the kids with special needs. What do you do with that?
Okay, so there are some kids, by special needs, there's some kids who may need medication to sort of focus at school. A lot of times during the summer, we give them summer breaks, so we give them a break off of their medication. However, what is encouraged is that you start back that medication perhaps about 2 weeks before school begins, so that they get back into that feel again, and you know, so that when school begins, they're ready for school. So that's what we recommend.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant tips. And it's something you said a couple of times, that you need to know your child.
Yes, very important.
We're all different. Some probably don't study as much, but they still get it done. Some need to study a lot, or they won't get it done. But you need to know your kids. And you need to understand that kids are people too.
Absolutely.
Please, kids are people too. So don't shut them out and tell them to shut up and stuff like that. Work with them. Great to see you.
Thank you so much.
And good luck with your son.
Thank
you.
First
Child at a high school?
Yes.
Oh, mommy.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's not you going in, mommy.
I know, I feel like it's me. I know, I am. I have to try to deflect that energy from him, but yeah.
He'll be fine.
I hope so.
Good luck. Going to a great school also.
Thank you.
Not St. George's, believe it or not, but a great school. Consultant pediatrician, Dr. Lisa Franklin Banton. 10 minutes to your health. We'll do it again next week.